So Warren, it's my pleasure to introduce you with a brief introduction. Warren Lehr began working for the city of Owasso in 1993 with the startup of the Bailey Ranch Golf Club. In 1999, he left Owasso and served as the general manager for the, Paco Ridge Golf Club in New Mexico before returning to the city of Owasso to serve as the director of parks and golf in 2007. Warren became an assistant city manager in 2009 and accepted the position of city manager in 2014. Warren graduated from Norman High School. He completed a bachelor's degree in communications from Cameron University and received an Oklahoma Secondary Schools teaching certificate. He completed 70 hours of graduate work at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Warren and his wife Nina have 2 grown daughters and 2 grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, a man of high character, please welcome Owasso City Manager Warren Lehr. Warren. Okay, this is the brains here. This is Donovan.
How are you?
Controlling our electronics.
Donovan showed me how to do this and how to make that transition that he just did. And Gary stepped in and said, Donovan, why don't you just sit up here close and do this? I said, Donovan, that's a much better plan. You probably ought to do that. Well, thank you for being here today. So many friends and familiar folks, but so many important leaders in the community. It's very, very intimidating. But always happy to do this. But before we start, I want to thank some important people. I want to acknowledge some important people right up front. My wife Nina is in the audience. We've been back in Owasso for 14 years. That's very hard to believe. 14 years. This past year we celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. So she's put up with me for 40 plus years. That's hard to believe. Nobody else has contested like that. And then, as already mentioned, our city council, Mayor Bill Bush, Vice Mayor Kelly Lewis, Councilor Bonebreak, Councilor Dunn, Doug Bonebreak, Wendell Dunn, and Councilor Alvin Frugier. These are the people that really make things work smoothly. And Gary mentioned volunteers. They're volunteers. I always joke we're going to, double their pay from a slice of pizza every month to maybe something better, but we sometimes don't remember that they are volunteers. Not in every community are counselors volunteers. Some communities pay their counselors very nicely. I think this is the best scenario until further notice, but they make things work smoothly. And then I want to ask all our city employees to stand up. These are the folks that get the work done. I'm going to just ask you to stand up right up front and say thank you. Thank you. Those are the folks that really get it done. So before we really get started, I've got a pretty special announcement. I don't want to make too big of a deal out of this, but I haven't really told this to anybody, but it seems that I have been selected by someone from another country to be initiated and inducted to a very special group. This is an email from Joanna Maria do Amaral Barros Moreira Firmino. And Joanna wrote me saying, greetings from the Illuminati World Elite Empire, bringing the talented to limelight of fame, riches, powers, and security. Get recognized in your business and rise to the top in whatever you do. All these you will achieve in a twinkle of an eye when you get initiated into the great Illuminati Empire. Once you're initiated to the Illuminati Empire, you will get numerous benefits, such as knowledge, connections, and also an instant US $1.5 million USD US dollar donation cash benefit as a reward to you for your membership with the Illuminati Brotherhood. Important note, that this email was created solely for the purpose of our recruitment scheme, which will end next month, and this offer is for unique ones only. If you're not serious on joining the Illuminati empire, then you are advised not to contact us at all. This is because disloyalty is highly not tolerated here in our organization. And I won't bore you with the rest, but down below another note, some email providers incorrectly place official Illuminati messages in their spam junk folder or promotion folder. This can divert and exclude our responses to your email. Signed, the Illuminati. So, I'm going to try to remember all the people that got me here, you know, it's an interesting concept. Secret societies with special superior knowledge and strategies have been around through the centuries. Some of you know about the Gnosticism, the Gnostics in the first couple of centuries. The idea that we'd have secret special knowledge is out there. I just recently heard of a new acronym, UPIS, UPIS. Unwarranted presumption of intellectual superiority. So I thought that was interesting times, unwarranted presumption of intellectual superiority. But it seems there always have been, and many who believe they're intellectually and morally superior to the rest of us. On that note, moving right in, numerous studies, you probably know this, numerous studies show that the majority of us think we are smarter and more moral than average. Recently, this is a quote from researchers at the University of London, that substantial majority of us believe we are morally superior to the average person. It goes on to say, most people strongly believe they are just, virtuous, and moral, yet regard the average person as distinctly less so. A 2021 study found that half of those surveys will say, I'm the best person I know. Wow. I'm the best person I know. Half of people surveyed said I'm the best person I know. You're probably familiar with the fact that 93% of us believe that we're better drivers than everyone else on the road. You might remember the George Carlin quote that it seems that every driver who's slower than us, that drive slower are idiots, and those who drive faster are all maniacs. So, It is interesting, though. The studies show that we believe we're smarter, more moral, more ethical, friendlier, and even more ambitious than the average person. You might think with all that greatness that we believe about ourselves, there might be an ego problem. No, we also believe we're more modest than the average person. So yes, we're better at everything than everybody, but at least we're humble about it. So moving right along here, on a more serious note, very serious note, a recent study actually found, in answer to the question, have you felt lonely in the past week? 2/3 of people said yes. And that's, we live in a difficult time. And that's a very strong indication that we're not all as well as we think we are. So I've got kind of a theme for this presentation. I ran this quote back in March. It hit me by surprise. Some of you recognize the writer Owasso Chambers, who said we lose interest and give up when we have no vision, no encouragement, and no improvement. Now this falls right in line with what psychologists and researchers have been telling us for years, that these things are needed for us to have thriving lives. We've got to have a vision, a state of reality that's bigger than what we have right now, and we've got to have some encouragement, and we've got to experience improvement in our lives. Owasso Chambers wrote that. Most of you, many of you would know that he's a theological writer. He was a pastor. He wrote a book called My Utmost for His Highest. And I think this is the fourth reading. It's a daily devotion, and the fourth reading of this book over the years. March 6th, this quote popped out at me. And there's nothing, even the context of the quote is not theological. It just makes the statement that we lose interest and give up when we have no vision, no encouragement, and no improvement. So that's sort of the theme quote for today. I'm going to try to bring a little bit of vision, a little bit of encouragement, and a little bit of improvement, both review some of the improvement that we've had and encourage us to more improvement. Little disclaimer here before I move on. This is my 9th State of the City message, and I always have a softer side. I call it a softer side. And I've gotten good feedback on that, but I always feel a little bit a little bit unsure. I don't want to be preachy. I don't want to tell other people what to do, but teaching, my dad taught at the University of Oklahoma. Teaching's kind of in my blood a little bit, and it's really my observation. And if you ever hear anything that sounds a little bit preachy, I promise you, I'm preaching to myself. And today, the things we're going to talk about, 100% to myself. So why do that, I ask myself? Well, it's to hopefully give you a little bit of an insight into who we are at the city of Owasso. You know, we have a character program. Gary mentioned it. It's mentioned all the time. And I'm trying to give you a little insight into the things we talk about at the city, the character traits and the discussions that we have. And hopefully it gives you, it engenders a little bit of confidence. Another religious man in the 16th century by the name of John Calvin said nothing, how did he say it? He said, nothing more certainly invites slanderous attacks than to be handling public money. Nothing more certainly invites slanderous attacks than to be handling public money. And whether you're at the city or the state or with the school system, we're handling public money. We are stewarding your tax dollars, your resources. So it's pretty important that you have some level of confidence. Now, that's the greatest value of these messages. Hopefully we can engender a little bit of credibility and confidence, but if we don't, we don't. Hopefully you'll find something of interest. One of the biggest, I thought of this the other day, one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten for the city of Owasso, and Gary alluded to something like this, actually came up at a city attorney's lunch meeting, or maybe it was just a meeting, I don't know. This was a couple of years ago. Our city attorney was sharing this with me. The question came up, can a city operate successfully just by trying to do the right thing? And surprisingly, there was skepticism among attorneys on that question. And is actually, I think, David Weatherford who piped up and said, well, essentially that's what Owasso does. So it seems to work. And another city attorney, I think, chimed in. But what a great compliment that we try to do things on our city council and city staff and city government and in our community as a whole. We just try to do the right thing. So, but let me move on. First vision, real people, real character, real community. This is more or less our vision for the future. What I love about real community is that communities from Latin communis, it's just a number of people gathered together in the same space. So your community can be your family, your community can be your work team, your organization, your community can be the people you go to church with. You know, we talk about community a lot nowadays. So real people, real character, real community. Well, what does that mean? There are some principles and preferences, laws, principles, and preferences is an old model I use, but laws and principles, or maybe see them as truths and fundamentals that are necessitated by that truth. But when we talk about real people, we talk about the law of equality. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, and that necessitates the fact that we recognize that individually we're very different. We bring different things to the table, different gifts, and that requires respect. Real character, the law of relationship, the fundamentals of communication and reconciliation. These things have never been more relevant in our city, in our state, in our country than today. I'm really proud of this vision in that respect. And real community, law of unity, principles of collaboration and service. So vision, what is it really? A man named Simon Sinek, you've probably heard of him. He is not a theological writer to my knowledge, but he's one of the most popular business and leadership authors in the world today. He wrote a book called The Infinite Game. Staff read through that this year. It looks at things over the long haul than just for immediate results, and that's what the book's mostly about. But he's got one of the best explanations of vision that I've seen. He calls it a just cause. So a vision must be, this is something we envision, something we see ourselves as a part of that's bigger than us. It must be for something. It must be positive and appealing. It must be inclusive of all. That's business, government, education, healthcare, young, old, all faiths, all ethnicities. It must be others-oriented, service-oriented. It must be universal and timeless, resilient, able to endure political, technological, and cultural change. But, and this is what I love, the last part, idealistic. It's big, bold, and ultimately unachievable. So, we hold up real people, real character, real community, and we see aspects of that, but we know we'll never achieve it on this earth in its totality. We know that when people come together, they're going to disagree, and there's going to need to be communication, there's going to need to be some reconciliation, but every part that we accomplish is a victory. You've got things in your mind, whether in Owasso, from a government side, we look at Owasso Strong Neighborhoods Initiative, we look at how our pastors and churches get together and get along with each other and meet together. We look at our character program, we look at how the city of Owasso responded when protests and marches have come. We got folks out there handing out water, the police protecting those who would be against them. Owasso has handled those things well and weathered those things well. Our city council, I think, did a phenomenal job in handling and addressing COVID as we continue to work through that. But everything we do in trying to do the right thing with the right motives is a success toward vision. Real people, real character, real community. So there's the idea, there's the vision: respect others as equals, communicate truth, extend grace, reconcile, work together, serve others in unity. Remember, we lose interest and give up when there's no vision, no encouragement, and no improvement. So on to encouragement. Here's a timely quote. If you recall back that last sobering study, 2/3 felt lonely in the last week. Ran into this recently. Every single person is underencouraged and overwhelmed on some level. So it's timely to keep in mind. We never know what someone is going through. So I just would urge us all to be kind and encouraging to everyone we come into contact with. But some encouragement for you. Moving on. Staff walked through this book last year, John Eldredge, Get Your Life Back. Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. I would highly recommend it. Early in the book, he makes a key statement. We've been sucked into a pace of life nobody's enjoying. We've been sucked into a pace of life nobody's enjoying. We've got news reporting 24/7. We've got social media 24/7 with all the fear, the ambition, the emotions, the negativity, the insecurity. It's all really too much, and sometimes we don't even know that we're falling into it. So I put together these 3 simple practices that come right from the book to help. And just a tip. Some of our folks really benefited from the dozen or so principles in the book, but here's just 3. First, benevolent detachment. Well, what does that mean? Benevolent means kind. Detachment, this is a kind extraction. Well, why would that be? Little illustration. For years and years, centuries and centuries, until modern times, really, the pace of life that human beings experience was about 3 miles per hour. The pace of life was walking pace. And the space of life, or the circle of our lives, was, by one sociologist's calculation, about 150 people, the size of a medieval village. And in older times, before modern times, that was our circle of influence. You really connected with your nuclear family, your connections to the people that maybe you worked in the field with or that you worked at a trade with. But our influence and our what we took in was limited to about 150 people. Here's where the benevolent detachment comes in. Our souls, our hearts, our being, we as human beings are really not designed to process the ills and tragedies of the whole world. We're just not designed for that. We can't take that on our own. So Eldredge's advice is to maybe limit your news sources and not take in so much. Don't try to process everything that's going wrong in the world. It's just too much. Now, that doesn't mean bury your head in the sand and don't keep track of news, but be careful how much you're taking in. The second thing, simple unplugging, related to the first, but a little different. You know what that means: unplugging from devices, unplugging from the 24/7 news feed and social media and all the emotions and the negativity and the turmoil in your heart that goes along with that. So simple unplugging, we're worn out and we may not even know why. And then third is get outdoors. Beauty, fresh air, sunsets, sunrises, aren't they incredible? Lately, maybe I'm just noticing them. They're always incredible, but the beauty, the creative beauty that you find. All those things bring a sense of awe to us. They make us feel a little bit smaller, and in that way, a little more humble and a little bit more connected with our fellow human beings. If you'll experience that with your family and friends, it will do wonders for lessening your stress and good for your soul. So, we lose interest and give up with no vision, no encouragement, and no improvement. Let's move on to improvement. I want to talk about a real threat to community, a little play on words, a threat to real community, a real threat to community. And, as we ask ourselves, how can we improve community? I think we have to identify threats. There's this thing called a SWOT analysis. I think the T stands for threats. There's a saying, defense wins championships. I think some of you OSU fans out there are holding on to that. I agree, defense wins championships. I wish you the very best. Rooting for Oklahoma State. But defense does win championships, a little bit more on offense later. But right now, before we name the threat, let me just say I'm not presumptuous to believe that us just talking about this threat is going to make the problem go away, but awareness is a start. I want you to know I vetted this subject with 3 different groups of people. 1, our department directors, 2, the Owasso Public Schools administrators, and 3, a class of TCC students. And they were all very intrigued by this subject, this real threat to community. So, this is a threat also to your family community, your church community, your work community, whatever, so you can apply it wherever. So what is it? What's the real threat? Let's call it, for starters, let's call it triangulation. Triangulation is when 2 people in conflict, rather than resolving their disagreement, involve or entangle other people, usually in an attempt to avoid or get their way, or maybe diffuse the conflict. Maybe it's a real effort to diffuse the conflict. You can see by this simple tool devised by Giant Worldwide that what happens is not good when person 1 goes down to person 3, 4, 5, and 6 to avoid the problem or get their way or diffuse the conflict. What it leads to is misrepresentation of the facts or gossip and slander. Well, no one here today would say, I'm a gossip, that's me, I fall into that category. But frankly, we all, I'm talking to myself here, but we all struggle with this some, and there's reasons for it. And I know you might say, well, I'm in leadership. Most people in this room are in leadership, so we have to talk about people. We have to devise solutions for the problem people and the difficult situations we find ourselves in. And even if I'm just coaching someone, I might want to talk to somebody else about those people. I understand that. There is a talk about people that is positive. But here today, the real threat is triangulation, misrepresentation, gossip, and slander. The tension is building. But let's move forward. We'll get back to this slide later. What causes triangulation, misrepresentation, gossip, and slander? I bet you know. It's really this, insecurity. Okay, who here would say, I'm insecure, that's me? No, don't raise your hand, I'm just kidding. But you're probably thinking, I'm a little insecure about telling everyone else that I'm insecure. And that is totally understandable. That's how we all feel, but it's okay, really. We're all insecure. If you're not, maybe you should be. But we are all insecure, and there's 2 kinds. I didn't read psychology on this, but you got internal insecurity, which is identity, self-image, self-esteem. That's pretty important stuff. You know, we're always, as humans, we're always convincing ourselves we're either right about something or more right or in some way better than others. We're really good at self-justification and denial. That's just a fact. So if we start there from square one and say, this is what we're about, this is what we're good at, we're all insecure, so we all struggle with those things. First the external insecurity. It's maybe even worse. In 2020, we ran into insecurity in the external world, our health, our finances, civil unrest, political, racial, every kind of insecurity that has just warred on our souls. It's a difficult time. You're here, you're organized, you've got yourself together, and you've showed up at a luncheon, and you're networking, and you want to hear what's latest in Owasso. You've handled it better than 90% of the rest of the world. You're doing well. I'm proud of what our organization has done. I'm proud of what's happened in Owasso, but it's very challenging. It's tough times. It is tough. We've never been more insecure. This is an emotional roller coaster that we've never been on quite like this. So, shameless celebrity quote. I had a couple of these the last few years. This is a good one. People gossip, people are insecure, so they talk about other people. They point out flaws in other people to make them feel good about themselves. Blake Lively, I'm not sure exactly who that is. I think she's an actress. I think it is a female actress. But truth comes, all truth is God's truth, and it comes from everywhere, and very, very true. Insecure people put others down to build themselves up. Everybody does this at some point. And we got to start with an awareness that we all do this at some point. A few years ago, I recognized I don't like, even if you feel like it's for good reason, I kind of came to the point, I don't feel good about that. I don't feel good that I've just talked a little bit down about someone in a way, and you got to get sensitive to it, and believe me, the temptation is going to come back again and again because what? We're insecure. So, definition of gossip real quick: negative information, whether it's true or not, negative information designed to make the speaker and hearer feel superior. Now, there's a lot of definitions of it, that's just one. Slander is simply to speak against. It seems that gossip and slander all go together, always go together. There's a reason for it, but they both lead to misrepresented viewpoints. And, I'm a little hard on myself, but I don't speak this to be preachy in any way. It's just a recognition that we all do this to some extent. But when we misrepresent the views of others and we speculate others' motivations, it's very damaging. Whether it's self-justifying or there's a bias or there's a lobbying involved, it's very damaging to community. Let's go back to the triangulation slide for a second. I want to make one distinction. This is actually from a discussion I had with Chad Balthrop, who's in the room, a couple of weeks ago. There is a distinction between disagreement and divisiveness. So if you look at that top line, to disagree is perfectly okay. If you're in the room with other people, you're probably going to disagree. So to disagree is okay, but if you take person 1 and move him or her down to person 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's divisiveness, and that's not okay. Triangulation or misrepresentation or gossip or slander, whatever it is, they all fuel polarization, they stifle civility, they keep quarrels alive, they kill unity, and they hurt the community. And I'm going to move off of this here pretty quick, but we are currently in a pandemic, not only of COVID, but a pandemic of insecurity, which causes misrepresentation, triangulation, gossip, slander, assumed motivations, all kinds of trouble. Celebrity quote number 2, how about this? You can tell more about a person what he says about others than you can what others say about him. I'm going to give you a celebrity illustration. This is a bonus. I just heard this on a podcast. John Mayer, have you heard of John Mayer? He's a songwriter artist. Well, he apparently was in a beef with another songwriter artist, and the fans of the other songwriter artist were attacking John Mayer, and they were sending him emails. And he got an email that said, "You're ugly, I hope you choke, I hope you die," and several other profanities. "I know you won't reply." Well, John Mayer replied and said, "Hey, I'm not upset, but I've been getting several of these lately, and I have a curious mind. Do you really hope that I die?" Person wrote back immediately and said, "Oh my gosh, no, what? I didn't think that you would ever see this or reply, or what have I done?" And it kind of shows that people don't even know what they're saying. And they certainly don't know what they're talking about. There's a distinction there. And it kind of points out in all Proverbs, soft answer turns away wrath. But if we understand that people, kind of like that 2/3 of the people that are lonely and you don't know what they're going through, if we understand that people are in very sensitive, difficult places, we can extend a little more grace that they might say things they don't mean and they don't really know what they're saying. So there's a solution for this, or at least the beginning of a solution. The first line of defense is that firewall. You can stop misrepresentation of views before it gets out in your organization. And again, this works in your family, your business, the whole city, but you can stop it with a firewall. That firewall might sound simply like this. Person number 3 telling person number 1, have you talked to person number 2? Have you talked to them? And you can have a simple rule in your organization that we talk to other people before we talk about them. You've heard those rules before, but this awareness and sensitivity to the conversations that are happening, we don't dive in because we feel better about ourselves, but we actually protect the person who is being attacked, the person not present. Because, again, 2 people can compromise or repair a disagreement, but gossip complicates that beyond repair. If that misrepresentation goes out to many other supporters and detractors, we cannot reconcile groups of supporters and detractors who never really had the real information in the first place. It's impossible. So in that way, that misinformation, that really hurts community. Okay, I'm going to leave this and give you with one little piece of offense, more on offense later, but great quote. This is kind of what I resolved a couple of years ago to try, and I've just not been as successful as I should be at this, but if we all resolve to speak ill of no one and speak the good we know of everybody, it's a better world. And if 5 people in this room can resolve to that, we're further ahead than we were last week. So let's move on to some things that are positive. This is a good positive segue in the season that we're in. Gratitude and thanksgiving can certainly bring some joy and peace to this season. Okay, so what's going on by the way of improvement within the city? This is the hard side of this State of the City talk. We have a lot to be thankful for in Owasso. Let's look at the kind of the physical built environment improvements made or are being made. First off, the South Sports Park Regional Detention Pond. 10 years ago, this was a dream. I remember Roger Stevens telling me the need for this to mitigate flooding in northern Owasso and northwest Owasso, and there's no way we had $4, $5, $6 million to build this facility. Today, it's done, and it's a fantastic project. It's one of those expenses, $4.5 million, that maybe people don't always realize that you have as a city. Moving on, the Elm Creek Park renovation, we've talked about this for a long time, complete in fall of 2021, a $1.4 million project for one of our important little neighborhood parks. Bank stabilization, you can see in that picture, the trees on the left had to be taken out because the roots were creating too much sedimentary deposit into because of the destabilization of the bank. So removed the trees and did some trail work, and a wonderful project. New playground equipment and parking lot on the south side. There's a picture. Great project. Another project completed just recently, actually in August. The Bailey Ranch Golf Club renovations completed a total renovation of all 18 greens and the putting green behind the first hole from bentgrass to Bermuda. The bentgrass greens had out-survived their 20-year lifespan. 25 years is all you can hope to get, and we've now replaced them with a strain of Bermuda grass that putts just as well. You've got my golf hat on now, so I'll try to keep it short, but that putts as well, and you can see that green right there. It's beautiful. Putts as well as the bent grass, and is much more hardy for Oklahoma weather. You have to cover them in the winter, because if you have a winter like last winter, it can be difficult, but generally Bermuda does much better. Some bridge work there that you can see. Great renovations, bridge work, 20 new greens, new irrigation, leveling of tees, renovating tee boxes also for about $900,000. So great project. Moving on. Wow, this one was on the books for a long time. I can't believe that completed just came up. 76th Street Widening, we've been talking about for 10 or 11 years. It's been a labor of love, but a flagship for government inefficiency. you know, you just got to tell it straight. I mean, this almost got held up, and Tim Gatz is not here, but Roger Stevens and I were in the room, and this project was getting ready to get held back for another couple of years because the state said we miscalculated on the sound study, and in 5 to 6 years, 76th Street could be busy enough that would require sound walls along, I shouldn't be saying this right here, but it was kind of a projection of a maybe, and we said, we have to finish this project now. Can't we look at the sound in 5 or 6 years and look at the growth and the traffic numbers and then build a wall? It would have been a couple more $1 million in a couple more years, so got it done, let's move on. 116th and 129th Street intersection. By the way, that last project was a $10 million project, $5.5 million from Surface Transportation funding, and $4.5 million from the city of Owasso. That used to be an 80-20 project, but it turned into more of a 55-45 project because the Surface Transportation Fund put a cap on how much money, so they kind of changed the rules in the game. Imagine that, government changing the rules in the middle of the game. So this project is a joint effort by Tulsa County. Thank you, Stan Salee and former Commissioner Smoligo. Tulsa County put in $1 million, Owasso put in $1 million, and ODOT, I think this was Surface Transportation project also, but another $2 million. So about a $4 million intersection project at 116th and 129th East Avenue. Similar at 106 and 145th. This is funded by our capital improvement third penny dollars, also $4 million. If you notice a theme there, intersections are about $4 million to totally upgrade and modern signalization and everything that's required. So great project, completed just this past, just in the fall. And moving forward, vision recapture, 116th Street widening from 129th East Avenue to 169. If you've driven out there, you've seen it completed, landscaping, everything. That's about $5.2 million worth of work that you see right there. Remember, the Vision 5500's recapture was voted on by a lot of you in this room in 2016. There's a 7-year sunset on that, so that'll expire in 2023. It's projected to fund about $32 to $37 million in projects, primarily 116th from Highway 169 to Mingo and 96th Street North, we'll get to that in a moment, from 119th East Avenue to 129th. So great project there. One of the first signs of complete streets and things to come with landscaping and sidewalks on both sides and a trail on one side, sidewalk on the other. Annual street rehab program. How to give a shout out to Councilor Deere here. I didn't list all the projects, but let me say first that from 1996 to 2012, very, very proud of this. Certainly thank your counselors for this, but in 1996, Poe and Associates said you need about $1.4 million a year, I think, to keep your streets in good shape. And until 2012, we spent about $385,000 a year in street rehab. But part of that was just the economy. We weren't doing very well, and there just wasn't a lot of money for street rehab. But from 2013 to today, we've averaged about $1.6 million a year, and for the last 3 or 4 years, it's 2, 3, 4, I don't know, $1.8 million is what we've spent. So we're making headway on that. Nation helped us recently by paying for about $500,000 worth of asphalt for 3 key street segments: 145th East Avenue from 106th to 116th Street North, 106th Street North from Mingo to 135th East Avenue, and Mingo Road from 96th to 116th. If you drive up in that northern part of town, you've seen the big improvements, so thank you, Cherokee Nation, for helping with that. Street projects are complicated. There's 5 or 6 stages. You know, you got the funding aspect of it. It's not easy at $10 million per mile. You've got the design and engineering, then you've got right-of-way and utility easements that have to be secured, then you've got utility relocation, and then you've got construction, and now we're finding that it's best to separate out landscaping and do that separate from the construction to save money. So street work, very important, very expensive. Keep moving forward. Also part of the vision recapture, the widening from Mingo all the way to 129th. That's 2 miles from 129th to Garnet, and from Garnet to Mingo. Those are both about $10 million cost segments. For 129th to Garnet, you might know or recall that we're moving from east to west here. And so the 129th to Garnet segment, utility relocating is happening right now, due to be finished in January, with construction starting in April of 2022. And then the Garnet to Mingo segment, the utility relocation should be done in about May of 2022, with construction starting in the fall of 2022. Now, some of y'all eat this stuff up. I know to others it's maybe not the most exciting thing, but this is incredible infrastructure improvements for our city that are just 100% necessary. If you drive these roads, you're excited about, not excited about the construction stage, but excited when it's complete. So moving on, under construction right now, 96 to 106. That's pretty much complete. Working on the landscaping part of that project right now. Again, had to separate that out because when the construction people do landscaping, they charge you quite a bit for it. So you get landscaping people to do landscaping, and you pay them, and the city comes out much better for it. So moving on, 137th East. Well, I didn't finish. The 106th to 116th Street segment, the Garnet Road Widening from 106th to 116th was next on the list. The last right-of-way and utility, the last right-of-way and utility easements are in the process of being secured. There's been some delays on that, but we hope to be under construction soon. That's about another $10 million. 137th East Avenue, the city's portion of this is about $1 million, should be complete in December. This is a public-private partnership with St. Francis. This is the Warren Clinic facility right next to Destined Life, as you can see, at the northeast corner of Highway 169 and Highway 20 or 116th Street North. Exciting project. The private side is funding about $375,000. Always happy to join in on these projects. Let's see how we're doing on time here. Not too bad. I think we're going to get it done. Intersection improvement projects, numerous. That first one, Mingo and 116th, that's last on the list as we move from east to west. That's sort of last, so there's no money budgeted currently for that, but that is coming after these others. 116th and Garnet, it's about a $4.5 million project. We just opened the bids on. Construction will start in February of 22 with completion hopefully by August. 106th and 129th, if that's in your area, that's about a $1.3 million project in partnership with Tulsa County, who's got about $2.6 million of that project. Thank you, Tulsa County. Right-of-way should be completed, purchased by January of 22. 96th and 129th, and the street segment in between, 119th East Avenue to 129th. The vision money I mentioned earlier, right in the heart of our retail corridor. Right now, right away, utility relocation is happening. Construction summer of 23 and hopefully completed by summer of 24. And then finally on that slide, 96th and 145th, about a $4.7 million project where the engineering design is underway. Okay, this one's exciting. Do you see those little yellow dots down in the lower middle of the slide? Can you see that those are people? This is a big project, not only from excavation purposes, but Chief Hurst will be happy to hear me say that this Public Works project is the largest single capital project that the city has done ever. Before now, it was Fire Station number 4 in public safety training. So Chief Hurst is happy to not have that honor anymore. But this wastewater treatment plant expansion, $22 million, is due to be complete in the spring of 2023. The great news about this is the city limits is it's a confined area. So this should be the last major expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. We can go into more maintenance mode. So this will be the last huge, I can't promise this, but it looks to be the last huge infrastructure expansion for wastewater of this type. Moving forward to some fun stuff, pun intended, fantastic island renovation. You can see that it's under the knife right now. It is a $1.2 million project, hopefully complete in spring of 2022. If you look at the inset there in the upper left, that's right on the, what's the south side or the top side of the project. That is a splash park area that even in the winter when the water's turned off, it still has playground type functions that kids can enjoy even when the water's not running. This is along with a South Sports Park 5K trail. This is a great project. So I've just listed about $100 million in projects. And when you consider that right now, 1 penny of sales tax in Owasso, it's getting close to $10 million. But 1 penny, that third penny, that capital improvement third penny, $10 million a year. But we've got 100 million in projects going. This is we've leveraged money. We've got Vision 2025 excess money happening here. We've got the Vision recapture money that we're utilizing here. But there's never been more infrastructure than this being built in Owasso. So it's a great time. On to another great subject. Mr. Aiken's going to be happy to hear, but Roger Stevens, everyone in the room, the widening of 169 all the way up to Highway 20 is now firmly rooted in the ODOT 8-year plan. You can see some projections there. This is long awaited. Gary Aiken, Roger Stevens, others before them, well maybe not others before Gary, but have lobbied for this for years and years, and it's happening. So that's kind of, you see 2024 construction from 66 to 86, kind of the highlights, and then moving on, continuing on. The actual construction from 86th Street North to Highway 20, the actual highway is not, it's outside of the 8-year plan. So it takes a long time to build roads and get it done, but it's happening. It's great for Owasso. What is going on in Owasso right now, real quickly, same slide as last year, sales taxes, collections, probably ought to fix this slide, sales tax is not up, collections are up, property tax is down, and the fund balance is up. Sales and use tax collections are actually up 19% over the last 2 years, 8% last year increase over the previous year. And that was even higher the previous year. So COVID has done some interesting things with how our citizens are spending their sales tax, whether it's a lot of online use tax, which is growing rapidly, but we do know that people are shopping, whether it's home improvement projects, staying home for vacation. There's a lot of changes in the world of sales tax collections, and that, as you know, is our bread and butter. 95%, 98% of the money that we use for operations and capital and everything we do to provide city services comes from sales tax. Fund balance is stronger than ever. It's about at 37% right now. That's a percentage of yearly revenue. So we have about a 4-month operating reserve. Typical for communities is to have a goal of 10 to 15%, a couple of months of operating reserve if things go really wrong. We're not in the business of saving your money, your tax dollars. We want to spend your tax dollars for your enjoyment, for your city's improvement. So things are good. Financial situation is very stable, probably the most it's ever been in Owasso. So all good there. Operating with excellence. This is the 5th year in a row that the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting to the city of Owasso. That's very largely through the efforts of our finance department, Linda Jones, who decided we're going to do a comprehensive annual financial report. We're going to be at the top of government accountability and reporting, and we've been doing that for 5 years. There's not a better finance director in the state of Oklahoma, probably in the nation. Thank you, finance department. Thank you for your leadership there. So fun stuff. There's not a slide on this, but in this past year, both hospitals, both Bailey Medical Center and St. John Owasso, were recognized for being the best maternity hospitals in 2021. by the Leapfrog Group, and as reported in Newsweek and Becker's Hospital Review, and St. John Owasso was recognized with a 5-star rating from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Only 455 hospitals out of 3,500 or so were rated 5 stars. So I know Wyatt Hockmeyer is here, as is Scott Lessing, so congratulations. Our healthcare folks are doing a great job. David Phillips is not here, is he? David Phillips has stepped down, and Dr. Wyatt Hockmeyer is the new CEO at St. John Owasso. So moving forward, just a reminder, we need to remain cautious, stay vigilant. We're on the Omicron stage now. If you're familiar with the Greek alphabet, I don't know what happened to the 10 alphabetic characters between Delta and Omicron, but Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, Lambda, all those. I'm sure there exists somewhere, but shouldn't make light of that. It's a very serious situation. We need to continue to be vigilant and do all you can to stay healthy. So what else? What's new in Owasso? I'm not going to try to name all these. A lot's happening. 4 or 5 new restaurants. I think at least 3 coffee shops, with about 3 more in the works. It's not on this slide, but right across the street, Rejoice Christian, Joel Pepin completed a $5.3 million Gibbs Field House. Probably had something to do with a fellow named Gibbs. But $5.3 million Field House athletic facility, great investment into Owasso. There's some of the new things, and this is not all of them. Here's some things that are in the works and coming soon. You're probably aware that there's a mixed-use facility in there. I mentioned the Warren Clinic. Pretty exciting. Coming just west of the Walmart Neighborhood Market on 86th Street is that lower right. St. John has announced a rehab hospital to be built on that big patch of land just to the east of the Walmart Neighborhood Market on 86th Street North. So that's kind of interesting. Most of you know there's a Costco coming to 46th and Highway 169. That is good for Owasso. We would have loved for it to come within the city limits, but just wasn't able to be worked out. And I'm moving toward a wrap up here. Some did you knows. Did you know that the city's annual water loss averages are well below the national average? Great job, Roger Stevens in Public Works. Did you know that the Owasso Strong Neighborhood Initiative and the Owasso Police Department provide an alert neighborhood program that focuses on safety in your home and neighborhood? This is a great program. Our Owasso Police Department, we have a new chief, by the way, Dan Yancey. If you haven't met Dan, introduce yourself to Chief Yancey. But our law enforcement philosophy or approach is called community policing. A lot of you are probably familiar with that, but it operates on the premise that 40,000 people can do more to make criminals unwelcome than 60 police officers. So the Strong Neighborhood Association does a great deal in carrying that message to every single neighborhood so that there's better communication between our police department and the neighborhoods, and I think we're doing a great job in there. City limits encompass roughly 16 square miles, but the Owasso Fire Department's response district serves approximately 80 square miles, providing emergency ambulance service. And did you know that 12% of the Owasso Fire Department staff are female firefighter paramedics? By the way, about 96-97% of all of our EMT people are full paramedics. They're not AMT 1s, EMT 2s, they are full paramedics, and 12% of those are female. This is a great practical and helpful diversity. It's wonderful with the culture of the department and the bedside manner of our firefighter paramedics. And did you know that in the last 20 years, Owasso population has doubled from 19,000 to over 38,000. So 2020 census numbers real quick, if you haven't jumped on the government site, it's data.census.gov, but 38,240 is the Owasso population number. That's with 13,342 households within the city limits of Owasso. That comes out to 2.87 people per household. The median household income is $72,443. That's a good number. 34.4% have a bachelor's degree or higher, and 1.2% support Lincoln Riley in his move to USC. Now, That does not include the OSU fans. I think all of the OSU fans pretty much. So, interesting stuff from your census. The city utilizes the land use master plan. We're currently in the process of updating that. We try to do that every 3 to 5 years. That's happening. If you go online, you can find out when the meetings are and have input in that if you'd like. And here's a slide that talked about putting together for years. People talk about tax burden or tax load, and these are the real numbers. The sales tax rate there on the left, that's the total tax rate, that's not the city rate. The state rate of 4.5 pennies is consistent for all of these towns, but these are we try to pick the growing, thriving suburbs, and of course Clarimore's our neighbor directly to the east. Some numbers on it. This is basically organized in tax burden per household, but you know there's a lot of factors in that. This is based on a $200,000 home, based on a $90,000 income, and then I ran numbers on sales tax from $20,000 of taxable purchases to $30,000 and even $60,000. Now, Owasso stayed in last place as the lowest taxes, first place actually, but the lowest taxes. Thank you, Dr. Ogilvy, Dr. Amy Fitchner, and Philip Storm. Look on that bottom line, the school millage rate. We all know how proud we are of our schools, but our Owasso school millage rate, 68.58, lowest among all those. Thank you very much for being responsible with our millage. And it's probably a good time to thank Dr. Fitchner. She's here in the room. Thank you for your service. But any way you cut it, no matter how you run those numbers, Owasso's, we're mid-range on sales tax, as you can see. The highest is Glenpool with 9.9% sales tax. Lowest is Jinx and Broken Arrow with 8.4. We're at 8.9. School millage rate, as I said, the lowest. City millage rate, don't blame John Ferry for the high cost of living in Claremore. It's not the city that's putting on that millage rate, but you can see the substantial millage in all those growing communities. 1 mill in Owasso is about $332,000 a year. If we were like Glenpool and had 3 mills, or like Sand Springs and had 15, or Broken Arrow. I'll give you Broken Arrow as an example. From, what would it be, about 2019. So from about 1999 to 2019, Broken Arrow collected about $220 million in property tax for city projects. And then in 2019, they passed another 16 or 17 mills, whatever it is, they're 16 mills, for another $220 million. So in the space of the past 25 years to today, Broken Arrow is collecting $440 million for city projects. Now, they're 3 times as big as Owasso is, but what could Owasso do with $150 million right now? You know, a third of that. So that's a sobering number. Now, in all transparency, we were set, when COVID hit, we were set to, the council was set to bring a millage, probably 3 to 5 mills, to an election in August of 2020, and COVID pretty much killed that. Fortunately, sales tax collections have been great, so that's been indefinitely put aside. So let's wrap this up. Some of you were definitely out of time. So offensive playbook for real community. First off, be aware, be sensitive to the conversations you're having, discerning, a critical thinker when you hear stuff. Ask, you know, is there a bias in this person telling me this? We're talking about triangulation, misrepresentation here. Be aware of your conversations. Why are people saying that? Then be a cross-examiner. I love this one the most. Ask, were you there? How do you know? Were you there when this was said? How do you know this is true? Have you talked to the person? What is the evidence that this is really true? There's a lot of questions we can ask without just taking, you know, full bore what someone says bad about someone else, or how someone is lobbying. So be a cross-examiner. Third, be a grace giver, one who gives others the benefit of the doubt when you don't have the facts. Same thing, don't be gullible. Give the other person when you don't have the facts. If you weren't in the room, if you didn't hear it said, if you didn't see it happen, then give the person the benefit of the doubt. You don't know that it's true. It's been said, I read recently, assumption is the lowest form of knowledge. And believe me, I know I've been guilty of this recently. And many times in the past, we assume things. Assumption is the lowest form of knowledge. Very possibly it's not knowledge at all, because it might not be true. So what one assumes, one does not know. So it's not even really knowledge. So you know what they say about assumption. Fourth, be a peacemaker, one who's calm, reasonable, de-escalates conflict and seeks resolution. 5, this might be the most important. We talk a lot about courage nowadays, but where's the courage for the person not in the room? You know, it takes some courage to step into a conversation and say, how do you know that? Do you know that's true? Is there any evidence of that? How do you know what their motivation was? How do you know what their will was in this case? So be a defender of people not present. And then finally, be a unity builder, be a speaker of all the good you know of everyone. Be a wise person suspends judgment and encourages reconciliation. So there's your offensive playbook for real community. Close with Aesop and Grandma. If you can't say anything nice, you know that one. But let me say this. Remember I said the Owasso Chamber's quote, we lose interest and give up when we have no vision, no encouragement, no improvement. But let me finish the quote. He says, we lose interest and give up when we have no vision, no encouragement, and no improvement, but only experience our everyday life with its trivial tasks. So this thing we call life can become very trivial if we're not careful. Don't let it. Not very many people in this room, I think, are going through the motions. You're here because you're doing stuff, but don't let people become trivial. This life can be stressful, even fearful. Unplug, get outdoors, reduce your stress. We need vision to move forward. We need encouragement. We need that human connection and kindness. We need improvement, as Chambers said. We need purpose. We need contribution. We need fulfillment. It's there. Seek it, and you will find it. Let me close just by saying this. In Owasso, may we be a community where people find kindness, encouragement, grace and truth, gratitude, and joy. Thank you.